My daughter once told me, "From now on, I decide when we talk or see each other. Stop chasing me." And honestly, you never were and never will be anywhere near my level. Those were her exact words. She didn't shout them. She didn't raise her voice. She said them with an icy calm, looking me right in the eye, as the March sun streamed through the living room window of my own home, and every syllable that left her mouth split me in two. I just stood there, my hands still damp from washing the dishes she hadn't even touched. I had made her favorite meal, the one I used to make when she was little and came home sad from school. Pot roast with mashed potatoes and a fresh salad. I set the table like it was a special Sunday dinner. I even bought flowers for the centerpiece. I spent $20 on those flowers. $20 that hurt my budget, but I paid it gladly because I thought maybe, just maybe, if everything was nice, she would stay a little longer, that she would look at me like she used to, that we would talk like mother and daughter. But Amanda barely touched the food. She checked her phone the whole time, answered texts, uploaded a picture to her social media where she was smiling in a fancy restaurant downtown. A restaurant where the cheapest dish costs $50. And there she was, radiant, with her cream-colored dress and pearl necklace, toasting with a glass of wine that probably cost more than my entire week's groceries. She uploaded that photo while sitting at my table, in my humble dining room, in front of the plate I had prepared with so much love and that she barely touched. When she finished eating, or rather, when she finished pretending to eat, she got up without clearing her plate. She didn't even ask if I needed help. She just stood up, fixed her hair, and looked me up and down, as if she'd only just then realized where she was, who I was. And then she said those things that I can't get out of my head now, even if I wanted to, that I was from another time, that I didn't understand her world, that I settled for little because I never had ambition, that I lived in an old house that was embarrassing, that my friends were simple, that the way I dressed was outdated, that everything about me reminded her of a life she had left behind and never planned to return to. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just nodded slowly, as if I agreed, as if everything she was saying wasn't destroying me inside. I walked her to the door. I gave her a kiss on the cheek, which she received with indifference. And when I closed that door, I leaned against the wood on the other side, feeling the silence of my house swallow me whole. I couldn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch in the living room, looking at the table still set, the dirty plates, the flowers that were already starting to wilt. I thought about everything I had done for her. The sleepless nights when she was a baby, the extra jobs I took to pay for her college, the times I skipped meals so she would have enough, how I sold the few pieces of jewelry I had from my mother to give her the down payment on her first car, a car she doesn't even drive now because she says it's too modest for her image. I got up and walked to my bedroom. I opened the drawer where I keep the old photos. There she was, my Amanda, at 5 years old, hugging me tight after her first day of school. There she was at 10 years old, blowing out her birthday candles while I looked at her with all the love in the world. There she was at 15, crying in my arms because a boy had broken her heart. And I was always there, holding her, wiping her tears, telling her everything was going to be okay. When did I stop being enough for her? When did I become someone to be ashamed of? I tried to remember when it all started. Maybe it was when she met Brandon, her husband, that man with expensive suits and perfect manners who greets me politely but looks at me as if I'm part of the furniture. Or maybe it was before that, when she got that job at the ad agency and started rubbing elbows with people who live in another world. A world where I have no place. The next few days were strange. I went on with my routine as always. I got up early, made my coffee, watered the plants in the garden, went to the grocery store, but everything felt different. There was a weight in my chest that wouldn't leave. A sadness that stayed with me even when I tried to distract myself with the television or with calls from my friends. Marta called to invite me over, but I told her I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I didn't feel well. I felt broken. I waited for Amanda to call, maybe to apologize, maybe to say she'd had a bad day and didn't mean it. But 2 days passed, and nothing. 3, 4, a whole week went by, and my phone remained silent. I checked my messages every hour. I looked at my missed calls list, hoping to see her name. But there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. so I started looking at her social media. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. There she was, living her perfect life. Photos in elegant restaurants, trips to the beach with her husband, meetups with friends at trendy coffee shops, selfies in her office with that radiant smile she used to give me. And in none of those photos, in none of those happy moments, was I there. It was as if I didn't exist, as if I had never existed. One afternoon, 2 weeks after that terrible conversation, I was cleaning out the closet when I found an old box. Inside were letters Amanda wrote to me when she was a teenager. Letters where she told me I was her hero. That when she grew up, she wanted to be just like me. Strong, brave, hard-working. I sat on the floor and read every one of those letters with tears streaming down my face. What had happened to that girl? Where was the Amanda who loved me unconditionally? And then I understood something that hurt even more than anything she had said. This wasn't an outburst. It wasn't a bad moment. This was intentional. Amanda had decided to erase me from her life. She had decided that I was a problem for the image she wanted to project, that my humble, simple existence stained her brilliant success, that a 68-year-old mother who lives in a modest house and wears clothes from a discount store didn't fit with her Instagram photos or her business dinners. I sat there on my bedroom floor, surrounded by memories, and I felt something I had never felt before regarding my daughter. I felt I had lost her. Not to death, not to distance, but to something much worse. To indifference, to contempt, to that calculated coldness of someone who looks at you and decides you're not worth the effort. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep chasing her. I wasn't going to keep begging for her attention. I wasn't going to keep making meals she wouldn't eat or buying flowers she wouldn't see. If she wanted distance, I would give her distance. If she wanted silence, I would give her silence. But not because I had given up, but because something inside me had changed. Something had broken, yes, but something had also awakened. I turned off my phone that night. I put it in the nightstand drawer. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I slept deeply. The next day, I woke up with a strange clarity, as if sleep had cleansed something inside me. I made my coffee as always. I sat on the small balcony overlooking the garden and started to remember. I didn't want to, but the memories came on their own, one after another, like pieces of a puzzle that was finally starting to make sense. I remembered Amanda's birthday last year. She turned 32, and I asked her weeks in advance if I could make her dinner at my house. She said yes, she'd love to. I spent days planning everything. I bought the freshest ingredients I could find. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I even had the wobbly dining room chair repaired. I made her favorite cake, that chocolate layer cake I'd made her since she was a girl. I spent almost $40 on the ingredients because I wanted it to be perfect. I put out new candles. I bought nice napkins. I even used a tablecloth I had been saving for special occasions. But Amanda never showed up. She called me 2 hours after the agreed-upon time. 2 hours during which I sat at that table, watching the clock, checking my phone, wondering if I had misunderstood the day or the time. When she finally called, her voice sounded light, unconcerned. She said she was so sorry, but something had come up at work, an important meeting she couldn't cancel. I told her it was no problem, that I understood, that we could do it another day. She said yes, we'd see each other soon. I hung up and stared at that table full of food no one was going to eat, the cake with its unlit candles, the flowers I had cut from the garden. The next day, I saw on her social media that she had had a meeting, but not for work. She was at an elegant restaurant with her friends, celebrating her birthday with glasses of champagne and a cake that probably cost over $100. In the photos, she looked radiant, happy, surrounded by people laughing with her. And I wasn't there. She hadn't even mentioned me. At the time, I thought maybe I was exaggerating, that maybe she really did have to cancel, and then her friends surprised her, that maybe it wasn't intentional. But now, sitting on my balcony with coffee in hand, I was starting to see things differently. I also remembered Mother's Day 6 months ago. That day, I waited all day for a call from her, a visit, even just a text. But nothing came. Absolutely nothing. I stayed home, watching television, trying not to feel bad, trying not to think that my only daughter had forgotten me on a day like that. At 9 in the evening, she finally sent me a text. It said, "Sorry, Mom. Day got away from me. Happy day, love you." Just like that. No punctuation, no capital letters, like someone sending a quick message between meetings, like someone fulfilling an inconvenient obligation. And I replied, "Thank you, sweetie. Have a good night." As if it didn't hurt, as if I hadn't spent the whole day waiting for her. But that same night, checking her social media because it had become a painful habit, I saw she had been at a spa all day with Brandon. Photos of massages, facials, a meal at a restaurant with an ocean view. She had time for all of that, but not to call her mother. I started to count, to remember every time something like this had happened, and the more I remembered, the clearer it all became. Christmas the year before, she told me they were traveling to Brandon's parents' house, that they couldn't be with me because the tickets were already bought, and it was a commitment they couldn't break. I understood. I spent Christmas alone, with the radio on so I wouldn't feel the silence so much, eating the leftovers from the dinner I had prepared just in case they changed their minds. But later I found out from Marta, who has a niece who works with Amanda, that they hadn't traveled anywhere. They had thrown a party at their apartment. A fancy party with their friends from the office and their neighbors from their building. A party to which I, of course, was not invited. When I asked her weeks later how the trip was, she told me made-up details. That her in-laws' house was beautiful, that they had turkey, that it was cold. She lied, looking me right in the eye. And I, as always, believed her. I also remembered that time I asked her to come with me to the doctor. I had to get some heart tests because I had been feeling strange palpitations. I told her I was scared to go alone, that the results made me nervous. She told me, "Of course, Mom, count on me." The day of the appointment, I got up early, got dressed, and waited in the living room with my purse ready. The appointment was at 10 in the morning. At 9:30, she sent me a text. "Mom, sorry, I can't make it. Something urgent came up at the office. But you can do it alone. You're strong. Tell me how it went afterward." I went alone. I sat alone in that cold waiting room. I went in alone to have the tests done. And when the doctor gave me the results and told me everything was fine, that it was just stress, I had no one to celebrate that relief with. I went home alone, on the bus, carrying the hospital papers. Amanda called me 3 days later, asking what the doctor had said. 3 days, as if it hadn't been important, as if I hadn't needed someone to hold my hand that day. And there was more, so much more. Little things that seemed normal at the time but now, seen all together, formed a clear pattern. The times she said she'd visit on Sunday and canceled at the last minute. The times I cooked something special for her and she'd say she already ate. The times I'd send her messages and she'd reply days later with a curt, "Sorry, didn't see the message." The times I'd tell her something important to me and she'd change the subject 2 minutes later. The times I'd show her pictures from when she was little and she'd look at her phone, bored. The times I mentioned my friends and she'd roll her eyes as if my life was irrelevant. The times I asked about her work and she'd answer in monosyllables, as if I weren't capable of understanding her world. I realized I had been making excuses for her for years, telling myself she was busy, that her job was demanding, that her life was complicated, that marriage required time and attention, that I couldn't be selfish and demand she be at my beck and call. But the truth was different. The truth was that Amanda had been slowly erasing me from her life. She had been building a new existence where I had no place. And she had done it so skillfully that I had ended up believing the problem was me, that I expected too much, that I was too needy. I got up from the balcony and went inside. I went to the bookshelf in the living room and took out the family photo album. I opened it on the dining room table and began to turn the pages slowly. There we were, the two of us, at every important moment of her life. Her first day of school, me holding her hand, her with her new uniform and huge backpack. Her elementary school graduation, me clapping in the front row, pride written all over my face. Her sweet 16 party, me in that green dress I bought on sale and wore so many times because I didn't have money for another. Her college graduation, me crying with emotion as she received her diploma. Her wedding day, Me helping her put on her dress, fixing her veil, telling her how beautiful she looked. In all those photos, I was there, always there. But now, if someone looked at Amanda's social media, if someone saw her current life, they would think she didn't have a mother. They would think she got where she is all on her own, that she built her success without anyone's help. And maybe that was exactly what she wanted them to think. I closed the album and put it back on the bookshelf. I stood there in the middle of the living room, feeling the weight of all those memories settle in my chest. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was something deeper. It was disappointment. It was contained rage. It was the pain of understanding that your own daughter sees you as a mistake from the past that needs to be hidden. But it was something else, too. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw things as they really were, without excuses, without justifications, without that veil of hope that made me believe everything would get better someday. Several days passed in which I did nothing but think. I didn't call anyone. I didn't leave the house except for what was necessary. I stayed there, in my little world, processing everything I had understood. And with every passing hour, something inside me was transforming. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was acceptance. Acceptance that my daughter had made a choice, that she had consciously and deliberately erased me from her life, that every cancellation, every lie, every time she forgot, hadn't been accidents or coincidences. They had been choices. I sat at the kitchen table one morning with a hot cup of tea in my hands. It was raining softly outside. The sound of the water against the windows was the only thing breaking the silence of the house. And in that silence, I finally stopped fighting the truth. My daughter was ashamed of me. I had always known it. Somewhere deep down I didn't want to listen to. But now I saw it with a clarity that hurt and relieved me at the same time. She didn't want me around because I represented everything she had left behind. Poverty, simplicity, life without glamour. I was the living evidence that she hadn't been born with a silver spoon in her mouth. That her expensive clothes and her luxurious apartment and her new car weren't family inheritance but her own construction. And instead of being proud of that, instead of honoring the path she had walked, she had decided it was better to pretend that path never existed, that I never existed. I got up from the table and walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. I saw a 68-year-old woman with wrinkles that told stories, with hands worn from work, with tired but still living eyes. I saw a woman who had given everything for her daughter and who was now alone. But I also saw something else. I saw a woman who was still standing, who hadn't collapsed despite it all, who still had strength, even if she didn't know what for. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to keep begging. I wasn't going to keep waiting. I wasn't going to keep justifying the unjustifiable. If Amanda wanted distance, I would give her more distance than she could imagine. If she wanted silence, I would give her a silence so deep she would feel it in her bones. But not out of spite, not for revenge, but because I had finally understood something fundamental. I couldn't keep begging for love where there clearly was none. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who didn't value those sacrifices. I couldn't keep living for a daughter who had decided I wasn't good enough. I had to live for myself. For the first time in decades, I had to think about me. I went to my room and took the phone I had turned off days ago from the drawer. I turned it on and waited for it to boot up. I had 11 messages from Marta asking how I was. 3 from Barb inviting me over. 2 from unknown numbers that were probably spam. None from Amanda. Not a single one. And that confirmed everything. She didn't miss me. She wasn't wondering why I hadn't called. She didn't care about my silence because she probably hadn't even noticed it. But I had noticed, and that was the difference. I answered my friends' messages with short, polite replies. "I'm fine, thanks for checking." I told them I had been busy, that I'd see them soon. I didn't tell them anything about what was happening because I didn't have the words to explain it yet. Then I opened Amanda's chat. Our last exchange had been 3 weeks ago. I had asked if she was okay. She had replied hours later with a yep, all good, and that was it. I started to type a message. Then I deleted it. I started another. I deleted that too. What could I say? That I was hurt? That I didn't understand why she treated me this way? That I deserved at least an explanation? But in the end, I wrote nothing. I closed the chat and put the phone away again. Words weren't going to change anything. Nothing I could say would make her understand what she had done. And if she didn't understand it on her own, then there was no point. The following days I spent in a sort of strange calm. It wasn't happiness, but it wasn't the desperate sadness from before either. It was something in between, a quiet acceptance of what was. A surrender that didn't feel like defeat, but like liberation. I started doing things for myself, small things I had put aside to always be available for Amanda. I watered my plants with extra care. I cooked the dishes that I liked, even if they were simple. I sat in the garden to read the book I had bought months ago, still unopened. One afternoon, while cleaning the house, I found a box of old things in the closet. Inside were documents, bank papers, old receipts. I started taking them out to throw them away when I found something that stopped me cold. It was a letter, or rather, a sealed envelope with my name written on it in handwriting I didn't immediately recognize. I opened it curiously. Inside was a letter dated almost 4 years ago. The signature at the bottom said James Evans. James Evans. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I started to read the letter slowly. It said he was a lawyer and needed to speak with me about an important matter related to a family inheritance. He left his phone number and asked me to contact him as soon as possible. I stared at that letter, not understanding. An inheritance? From whom? And why had I never seen this letter before? Then I remembered. 4 years ago, Amanda came to visit and offered to organize my papers. She said my closet was a disaster and she would help me sort everything. I accepted gratefully because back then, I still believed those gestures were out of love, not control. She spent an entire afternoon pulling out papers, reviewing documents, putting things in boxes. I was in the kitchen making dinner while she worked. When she finished, she told me everything was in order, that she had thrown out what wasn't needed and organized the rest. Could she have seen this letter? Hidden it on purpose? A chill ran down my spine. I didn't want to think that of my own daughter. But after everything I had discovered, after all the lies and exclusions, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I looked at the date on the letter again. 4 years. If there was an inheritance and I never responded, it was probably too late. The money or whatever it was had likely been lost or given to someone else. But something in me needed to know. I needed to understand what this was and why this letter had ended up hidden at the bottom of a box in my closet. I found my phone and dialed the number on the letter. It rang several times. I was about to hang up when someone answered. "Good morning, Evans and Associates." I swallowed hard. "Good morning. My name is Susan Florenza. I received a letter some years ago from a lawyer named James Evans, and I'd like to know if it's still possible to speak with him." There was a pause on the other end. "1 moment, please." I was put on hold. I waited for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if this was important or just a waste of time. "Mrs. Florenza?" I heard a man's voice on the line. "This is James Evans speaking. I've been trying to locate you for years." For years. I felt my legs tremble. I sat down on the bed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. I just found your letter. I didn't know you had been trying to contact me." His voice sounded surprised, but also relieved. "Ma'am, this is very important. I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. It concerns a considerable inheritance that belongs to you, and there are documents you must sign. I thought you weren't interested, but if you're calling me now, we're still in time." A considerable inheritance. The words floated in my head, not quite landing. I asked him what it was about, whose inheritance it was. He said he preferred to explain everything in person, that it was a delicate and complex matter. We agreed to meet 2 days later at his office downtown. When I hung up, I sat on the bed with the letter still in my hands. What did this mean? And why did I have the horrible feeling that Amanda knew more than I imagined? I put the letter in my purse. I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends. Something told me this was important, that this could change things. And until I knew exactly what was happening, I preferred to keep it a secret. I slept restlessly that night. I dreamed of papers, of signatures, of locked boxes opening on their own. I woke up several times sweating, my heart racing. When dawn finally came, I got up with a strange feeling in my chest, as if something big was about to happen, as if my life, after so much pain and darkness, was about to take a turn I never expected. The day of the appointment with the lawyer, I woke up earlier than usual. I showered slowly, put on my best dress, that wine-colored one I'd bought on sale 2 years ago and saved for special occasions. I combed my hair carefully, put on a little makeup. I wanted to look presentable, dignified. Mr. James Evans's office was downtown, in an old but well-maintained building. I took the bus that dropped me 2 blocks away. The entire ride, my mind was spinning. Whose inheritance could it be? My parents had died decades ago and had nothing to leave. I had no rich uncles or distant relatives with hidden fortunes. I arrived 10 minutes early. The receptionist, a young woman with glasses and a kind smile, showed me to a small but comfortable waiting room. They offered me coffee. I accepted, even though my hands were already shaking from nerves. At exactly 11 in the morning, an office door opened and a man in his 50s came out, tall, with gray hair and a dark suit. He extended his hand to me. "Mrs. Florenza, I'm James Evans. Thank you for coming." His handshake was firm but warm. He invited me into his office. It was a space filled with bookshelves holding volumes of law books, a dark wood desk, and large windows that let in the morning light. I sat across from him as he opened a thick folder full of documents. "Mrs. Florenza," he began in a serious voice. "I've been trying to locate you for 4 years. I sent that letter to your home address. I also tried calling you several times, but the number I had on file never answered." I remained silent. He continued. "This is about the inheritance of your brother, Robert Florenza." I felt the floor move beneath me. Robert. My older brother. I hadn't heard from him in over 30 years. The last time I saw him was when I was just 35 years old. He had gone to work up north, to the United States, looking for better opportunities. He promised me he would write, that he would visit, but the years passed, and I never heard from him again. I thought he had forgotten me, that he had made his life and decided to cut ties with his past, with me, with our humble family. It hurt me for years, but eventually, I stopped waiting for him. I stopped looking for him. I assumed he didn't want to know anything about me anymore. Mr. Evans looked at me with understanding, as if he sensed the shock on my face. "Your brother Robert passed away 5 years ago in Houston, Texas. He had no wife or children. In his will, he left everything to his only sister. To you, Mrs. Florenza." Tears began to run down my cheeks, and I couldn't stop them. Robert was dead 5 years ago, and I never knew. I couldn't say goodbye. I couldn't tell him that I never stopped thinking about him, that I never stopped wondering where he was, how he was. "I'm very sorry," the lawyer said gently. "I know this must be very difficult." I couldn't speak. I just nodded as I tried to dry my tears with a tissue he offered me. "Your brother worked very hard his entire life. He had several successful businesses, a chain of restaurants, real estate investments. When he died, he left a considerable estate." He took several documents from the folder and placed them in front of me. I looked at them, unable to focus, still processing the news that Robert was dead. The total value of the inheritance, after taxes and legal fees, is approximately $1,200,000. I froze. Those numbers didn't make sense in my head. I repeated it in a low voice, as if I needed to hear myself say it to believe it. $1,200,000? "Yes, ma'am. In addition to a property in Houston that is valued at $350,000, if you decide to sell it, that money would also be yours." I couldn't breathe. It was too much. It was all too much. My brother, whom I thought was lost, whom I thought had forgotten me, had left me everything he had. He had made me a woman with more money than I ever dreamed of having in my entire life. The lawyer kept explaining. "Your brother left very specific instructions in his will. He left letters for you, as well. Letters he wrote before he died." He took a large envelope from the folder. It had my name written on it in the shaky handwriting of someone who was very ill. "Take your time to read them. In the meantime, I need you to sign these documents so we can proceed with the transfer of the funds and the property." I took the envelope with trembling hands. I held it to my chest as if it were the most valuable thing in the world, because it was. It was the last thing I had left of my brother. "There's something else you need to know," the lawyer said. "I didn't just try to contact you. I also contacted your daughter, Amanda Florenza." The world stopped. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. "What?" The lawyer nodded grimly. "Yes. When I couldn't locate you directly, I searched for close relatives. I found your daughter. I sent her a letter explaining the situation, asking her to give you the message. I also called her twice." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My voice came out broken when I asked, "And what did she say?" "She told me she would give you the message. She assured me that you would get in touch with me. That was 3.5 years ago. Since I never heard back from you, I assumed you had decided to decline the inheritance or simply weren't interested. But I kept the file open, just in case." 3.5 years. Amanda had known for 3.5 years. And she never told me. She never passed on the message. She let that money sit there waiting while she treated me like trash. While she told me I would never be on her level. "Mrs. Florenza, are you all right?" No, I was not all right. I felt like I was going to be sick. I felt my entire body tremble with rage and pain. It all made sense now. The way Amanda had pushed me away. The way she had made me feel inferior. The letter hidden in my closet. She knew. She knew all along. And not only that, she had deliberately hidden that information. She had stolen 3.5 years of that inheritance from me. 3.5 years while I continued to live in my humble little house, counting every dollar, worrying about making it to the end of the month. While she lived in her luxurious apartment, with her expensive clothes, with her vacations and fancy restaurants, probably hoping I would never find out, probably waiting for enough time to pass so the inheritance would be forgotten or become so legally complicated that it wasn't worth claiming anymore. The lawyer was looking at me with concern. "Take your time. I know this is a lot to process." I took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. I tried to calm down. I tried to think clearly. "Do you need me to come back another day to sign the documents?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "I'll sign now. I want to sign everything right now." He nodded and began to explain each document. I signed everything he put in front of me. Certificates, authorizations, transfers. My hand was shaking, but my resolve was firm. When we finished, almost 2 hours later, the lawyer explained that the transfer process would take about 2 weeks, that the money would be deposited into the bank account I provided, that the property in Houston was in my name, and I could decide what to do with it when I was ready. He also gave me Robert's letters. There were 5 envelopes, each marked with a number. He told me to read them in order, that Robert had been very specific about that. I left that office in a state of shock. I walked through the downtown streets aimlessly for almost an hour. Finally, I sat on a bench in a small park. I took out the first envelope and opened it with trembling hands. Robert's handwriting was difficult to read, but I could make it out. It began, "My dear little sister Susan, if you're reading this, it's because they finally found you. Forgive me for disappearing from your life. It wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I was ashamed of having failed at first. When I came to the United States, I spent years working whatever jobs I could. Washing dishes, cleaning floors, loading boxes. I didn't want you to see me like that. I didn't want to disappoint you, but I never forgot you. Every single day, I thought of you, of your smile, of how you took care of me when we were kids and Mom was sick. You were just a girl yourself, and you were already so strong. I worked hard to give you something better, so that when I left this world, you would have everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to live without worries. This money is yours. Use it well. Live the life you always deserved. I love you, little sister. I always loved you, Robert." I cried right there on that park bench. I cried for my brother who never forgot. I cried for the lost years. I cried for all the love I could never give back to him. But I also cried with rage, because Amanda stole this from me. She stole my right to know that my brother thought of me until the very end. She stole 3 years of financial peace from me. She stole my dignity, and in that moment, I knew this couldn't be left as it was. I went home that afternoon with Robert's letters tucked in my purse like a secret treasure. I didn't want anyone to know yet what had happened. I needed time to think, to process, to plan. That night, I read the other 4 letters. In each one, Robert told me pieces of his life I never knew. He told me about his difficult early years in Houston, about how he met a man named Caesar Daniels, who gave him a job in a restaurant and became his mentor, about how, over the years, he managed to open his own business. He told me he always wanted to come back for me, but was afraid I would reject him for abandoning me for so long. He told me he loved me, that I had been the only real family he ever had, that this money was his way of asking for forgiveness and thanking me for existing in his life. I cried with every letter. But between the tears, something else began to grow, a cold determination, an absolute clarity about what I had to do. The next day, I went to the bank and opened a new account, an account that only I would know about. I gave the details to Mr. Evans to deposit the inheritance. He told me everything would be ready in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to prepare. But first, I needed proof. I needed to be absolutely sure of what Amanda had done. I couldn't confront her with just suspicions. I needed clear, undeniable evidence. I called Mr. Evans's office again. I explained my situation. I told him about the letter I found hidden in my closet. I asked if he could provide me with copies of every attempt he had made to contact me. Records of the letters sent, the calls made, the messages left with Amanda. He understood the gravity of the situation immediately. He told me he would prepare a complete file with all the evidence, exact dates, copies of correspondence, phone records, everything documented. Perfect, I told him. I need it all in writing. I spent the next few days in a strange calm. I continued my normal routine. I went to the grocery store, cleaned the house, watered my plants, but inside, my mind was working constantly, planning, calculating, preparing every detail of what was to come. One afternoon, Marta came to visit. She brought pastries she had made that morning. We sat in the kitchen drinking coffee. "Susan," she said with concern, "you seem different. Are you okay? You've barely left the house in weeks. You hardly answer your messages." I smiled and patted her hand. "I'm fine, Marta. I've just been thinking a lot about my life, about the things I've let slide." She nodded, not fully understanding, but she didn't press. Marta was like that, respectful of other people's silence. We talked about other things. Her grandkids, the neighbor who had a fight with her husband, the new bakery that opened on the corner. When she left, I returned to my silent planning. 5 days after my visit to the lawyer, I received a package by courier. It was the file he had promised me. I opened it with shaking hands and began to review every document. It was all there. The first letter sent to my home address 4 years ago. The postal receipt proving it had been delivered. The records of 3 phone calls made to my home number, all unanswered. And then, the most important part. The letter sent to Amanda 3.5 years ago. The delivery receipt signed by her. The records of 2 phone calls to Amanda's number. The first one lasted 6 minutes. The second, 4 minutes. In the lawyer's reports, he had noted the summary of those conversations. First call. Spoke with Miss Amanda Florenza, daughter of the beneficiary. Explained the inheritance situation. She stated she would give her mother the message immediately. Second call. Spoke again with Miss Amanda Florenza to confirm if her mother had received the message. She assured me she had, that her mother was considering her options and would be in touch when she was ready. Lies. It was all lies. I held those papers in my hands and felt the rage burn inside me. But it wasn't an explosive rage. It was something more dangerous. It was a cold, controlled anger that was turning into absolute resolve. I made copies of all the documents. I organized everything in a folder. Dates, evidence, written testimony from the lawyer. It was a perfect case, indefensible. But I still needed more. I needed to understand why. Why had Amanda done this? Was it just cruelty, or was there something else? I decided it was time to pay a visit, but not to Amanda, not yet. First, I had to talk to someone who could give me information without suspecting my intentions. I looked in my address book for the number of Diana Gales, a distant cousin of Brandon, Amanda's husband. I had met her at the wedding, and we had gotten along. She was a simple, hard-working woman who had nothing to do with the world of pretensions Amanda and Brandon lived in. I called her and suggested we meet for coffee. She accepted gladly. We agreed to meet 2 days later at a coffee shop downtown. When we met, Diana greeted me with a warm hug. We ordered coffee and toast. We talked about trivial things at first, her family, her job as a school teacher. Then, carefully, I started to steer the conversation toward Amanda. "How are the kids doing?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Diana made a face. "Oh, Susan, honestly, I barely see them. Brandon has become so distant from the family since they moved into that fancy apartment. And Amanda? Well, she's always been a bit complicated, hasn't she?" I asked her to explain what she meant. She hesitated for a moment, as if she didn't want to speak ill of anyone. But eventually, she started to talk. "Look, I love Brandon. He's my cousin, and we grew up together. But since he married Amanda, everything changed. She always wanted more. More money, more status, more of everything. She convinced Brandon to take jobs that paid better, but left him stressed out all the time. She pushed him away from the family because she said we were too simple for their new lifestyle." I kept listening without interrupting. About 3 years ago, something changed even more. Suddenly, they had more money. They bought that luxury apartment, the new car, started traveling constantly. I asked Brandon if he'd gotten a huge promotion at work. He said yes, but something in his face made me think it wasn't the whole truth. My heart started to beat faster. 3 years ago? Yeah, around then. It was very sudden. One day they were worried about money, and the next they had everything. There were even rumors in the family that maybe they had received an inheritance or something, but they never told us anything concrete. I felt the whole puzzle snap into place. 3.5 years ago, Amanda got the call from the lawyer. 3 years ago, they suddenly had money to completely change their lifestyle. "Do you think they used money that wasn't theirs?" I asked directly. Diana shrugged. "I don't know, Susan. I just know something didn't add up. And ever since then, Amanda has been even more arrogant with everyone, especially with Brandon's family. She looks at us like we're poor relatives who embarrass her." I thanked her for her honesty and paid for the coffee. As we parted, Diana said something that gave me the final push I needed. "Susan, you're a good woman, too good. Don't let anyone take advantage of you, not even your own daughter." I went home with a clear mind and a cold heart. Now I understood everything. Amanda had used the knowledge of my inheritance to get loans, to convince Brandon to spend more, to live beyond their means, thinking that eventually, when I died or when the inheritance was lost in red tape, they could claim it as my direct heirs. She had kept me poor and dependent on purpose. She had made me feel inferior on purpose. All so that when the time came to claim that money, I wouldn't be in a position to claim it or wouldn't even know it existed. It was a perfect plan, cruel, calculating, but perfect. Except now, I knew everything. I spent the next few days organizing my strategy. I wasn't going to confront her yet. First, I needed the money to be in my account. I needed to be in a position of absolute power. In the meantime, I did something I never thought I would. I hired a private investigator, a man recommended by Mr. Evans. I asked him to investigate Amanda and Brandon's finances, to bring me proof of their spending, their debts, everything. A week later, the investigator gave me a full report, and what I saw left me breathless. Amanda and Brandon were in debt for over $150,000. Bank loans, maxed out credit cards, debts to friends. They had been living for years spending money they didn't have, betting that they would eventually get access to my inheritance. But that wasn't all. The investigator had found something else. Emails between Amanda and Brandon discussing what to do with the money when they finally got it, how to split it, what to invest in, how to make sure I never found out. In one of the emails, Amanda wrote, "My mother is old and doesn't know how to handle money. It's better if she doesn't even know. When she's gone, it will all be ours anyway. In the meantime, we stick to the plan." I read those lines over and over. Every word was a stab, but it was also the final proof I needed. I put everything in my folder: the lawyer's letters, the call logs, the conversation with Diana, the investigator's report, the emails from Amanda. It was a perfect, indestructible case. 2 days later, I got the call from Mr. Evans. The money was deposited in my account. $1,200,000. More money than I had ever imagined. I went to the bank that same day. I confirmed it was all there. Real, tangible, mine. And then I knew it was time to act. I spent 3 days planning every detail of the confrontation. I didn't want to do it in a public place where there could be a scene. I didn't want to do it in their luxurious apartment where she would feel in control. It had to be at my house, on my territory, where it all began. I decided it would be a dinner like the ones I used to prepare when I still believed my daughter loved me. Simple, intimate, familiar. But this time, it would be different. This time, every detail would have a purpose. The first step was getting her to come. We hadn't spoken in almost a month. She hadn't reached out to me once. I hadn't contacted her either. But now I needed her there. I picked up my phone and sent her a text. I kept the tone neutral, emotionless. "Amanda, I need to talk to you about something important. Could you come to my house for dinner this Friday? It's urgent." The word urgent would make her mind race. She would probably think I was sick, or that I needed money, or that there was some problem she would have to solve, things that would annoy her but that she couldn't ignore. 2 hours passed before she replied. "What's wrong, Mom? Are you okay? I'd rather talk in person. Can you come on Friday at 7? There was another long pause. Finally, she replied, "Fine, I'll be there." Perfect. I had 3 days to prepare everything. I went to the grocery store and bought the ingredients to make her favorite meal, pot roast, the same thing I had prepared that terrible afternoon when she told me I'd never be on her level. I wanted her to remember that moment. I wanted the smell, the taste, everything to bring those words back to her. I also bought a bottle of wine, not the cheap kind I used to buy. This time, I spent $40 on a good bottle, the kind of wine she drank at her fancy dinners. I cleaned the house until it was spotless. I washed the curtains, polished the furniture. I tended to every detail, not because I wanted to impress her, but because I wanted there to be no distractions. I wanted all her attention to be on me and what I had to say. I set the table carefully, a clean tablecloth, plates set just so, silverware aligned. In the center, I placed a simple vase with flowers from the garden. Nothing ostentatious, everything simple but dignified. In my bedroom, on the bed, I placed the folder with all the evidence. I organized it chronologically. First, the lawyer's letters to my address. Then, the ones sent to Amanda. Then the call logs, the investigator's report, the printed out emails, all perfectly organized and marked with sticky notes to find everything quickly. I also prepared Robert's 5 letters. I put them in a separate envelope. Those were just for me, but I wanted them nearby. They gave me strength. On Thursday night, I mentally rehearsed every word I would say. I couldn't let my emotions take over. I couldn't scream or cry. I had to remain firm, calm, in complete control. Because the truth was powerful enough. It didn't need to be embellished with tears or rage. I just needed to present the facts, one by one, and let her drown in her own lies. Friday came faster than I expected. I got up early and started cooking. The pot roast needed time. I cut the vegetables carefully, seared the meat, and let it all simmer on low heat. The aroma filled the entire house, an aroma that once meant love and now meant something completely different. By 5 in the afternoon, I had everything ready. The food was prepared, the table was set, the folder of evidence was hidden in my room, but ready to be brought out at the precise moment. I took a long bath. I put on a simple but elegant brown dress. I put my hair up. I put on the pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother. I wanted to look like what I was, a 68-year-old woman with her dignity intact. At 10 minutes to 7, I heard a car park outside. I looked through the window and saw Amanda getting out of her car. She was alone. Brandon wasn't with her. Better. This was between her and me. The doorbell rang. I took 3 deep breaths before opening the door. There she was, my daughter. With her designer clothes, her expensive handbag, her high-heeled shoes, she looked me up and down, as she always did, with that mix of pity and disdain that had become so familiar. "Hello, Mom," she said, without emotion. She walked past me without even giving me a kiss on the cheek. I closed the door slowly. This was the moment. Everything I had worked for these past few weeks would come down to this night, to this conversation, to this quiet justice I had built with patience and pain. Amanda walked into the living room and stopped when she saw the table set. She frowned. "Pot roast?" she asked, her tone annoyed. "Mom, I already told you I'm watching what I eat. I don't eat heavy things like this." "Tonight you will," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Sit down." Something in my tone made her turn to look at me. For the first time in years, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, as if she finally realized that something had changed, that I had changed. She sat in the chair without another word. I sat across from her. I served the food in silence. I opened the bottle of wine and poured her a glass. She took a sip and raised an eyebrow, surprised. "This wine is good. I didn't know you had this kind of taste." I smiled without saying anything. It wasn't time to talk yet. First, I wanted her to eat, to get comfortable, to lower her guard. We ate in silence for several minutes. She checked her phone between bites. I watched her calmly, etching every detail of this moment into my memory, because I knew that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. When we finished dinner, I stood up and cleared the plates without a word. Amanda was still on her phone, typing messages as if she were anywhere but her mother's house. I poured coffee. I set it in front of her and finally spoke. "Amanda, put the phone down. I need your full attention." She sighed with annoyance but placed it on the table. She looked at me with that impatient expression she had perfected over the years. "What is this all about, Mom?" "I'm here. I ate. What's so urgent?" I sat down again, facing her. I placed my hands on the table. I took a deep breath. A few weeks ago, I found something in my closet, a letter that had been hidden there for 4 years. A letter from a lawyer named James Evans. I watched her face change, just slightly, a small tremor in her eyelid, a barely perceptible tension in her jaw. But I knew her. I could read every micro-expression. "James Evans?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I don't know who that is. He's the lawyer who handled my brother Robert's inheritance. My brother who died 5 years ago in Houston and left me everything he had." Now, there was panic in her eyes. She tried to hide it, but it was too late. I had already seen it. "Oh, you had a brother? I didn't know. You never told me about him." "I told you about him many times when you were a child. Robert, my older brother, the one who went to the United States when you were 5 years old." She shrugged. "I don't remember. Anyway, why are you telling me this now?" I stood up slowly. I walked to my bedroom. I grabbed the folder I had prepared. I returned and placed it on the table in front of her. "Because I want you to see something." I opened the folder. I took out the first document. The letter sent to my house 4 years ago. I put it in front of her. This letter arrived at my address. "Mr. Evans was trying to contact me to inform me about an inheritance of $1,200,000 that my brother left me." I watched her swallow hard, watched her fingers twitch on the table, but I never received that letter. "Do you know why, Amanda?" I took out the next document. The letter sent to her address, the delivery receipt with her signature. "Because 3.5 years ago, the lawyer contacted you. He sent you this letter. You received it. Here is your signature. And not only that, he called you, twice. He spoke to you on the phone. He explained everything about the inheritance, and you told him you would give me the message." "No, I never received anything. Here are the phone records. 2 calls, one for 6 minutes, one for 4. Here are the lawyer's notes on what you discussed, word for word." I placed the papers in front of her, one by one, methodically, without rushing. She tried to pick up the documents, but her hands were shaking so badly she dropped them. The color had drained from her face. I continued. "And here is something even more interesting." I took out the investigator's report. The debts, the loans, the excessive spending you and Brandon have been doing for the last 3 years. 3 years ago, suddenly you and Brandon started spending a lot more money. You bought the new apartment, the car, the trips, all paid for with loans and credit cards, as if you were betting that you'd have a lot of money available soon. Amanda shot up from her chair. This is ridiculous. You have no right to investigate my private life. I have every right when I discover that my own daughter hid information about an inheritance that belonged to me, that she kept me in poverty on purpose while you two lived neck-deep in debt, waiting to get your hands on my money. I didn't do anything wrong, she shouted, her voice finally breaking. I took out the printed emails. The final blow. Then explained this. I placed the email in front of her where she said it was better if I didn't find out, where they talked about waiting for me to die to take everything. She read it. And as she read, I watched her crumble. Watched all her arrogance, all her superiority, fall apart like a house of cards. She sank back into the chair. She covered her face with her hands. Mom, we were desperate. Brandon lost his job 3 years ago. We had debts. When the lawyer called, I thought we could use it, that we could get loans against that future inheritance, that you would never find out, and that when you were gone, we could pay it all back. When I was gone, I repeated, my voice icy. When I was dead, you mean? She was sobbing now. It wasn't out of malice. It was out of necessity. You don't understand the pressure we were under. The debts. The lifestyle we had to maintain. The lifestyle? My voice rose for the first time. You let me live counting every dollar, selling my things, worrying about making it to the end of the month. Also, you two could maintain a lifestyle you couldn't even afford? I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry because now you know you've lost. I stood up. I looked down on her. This woman who had been my daughter. This stranger I no longer recognized. The money is already in my account, all of it, every cent, and you will not see $1 of it. Not now, and not when I die. Because I've already spoken to the lawyer and changed my will. Everything I have will go to charity. You will get nothing. Amanda staggered to her feet. You can't do that. I'm your daughter. I'm your only family. You stopped being my family the day you decided your mother didn't deserve to know her brother had thought of her, that he had left her everything he had. You stole 3 years of peace from me. You stole the chance to know that Robert loved me. You stole my dignity. She reached her hands out to me. Please, Mom, we can fix this. I'll pay you back. I'll make it up to you. There is nothing to fix. I want you to get out of my house. Now. But, Mom, now. My voice echoed in the small house, firm, unbreakable. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging, I was commanding. Amanda grabbed her purse with trembling hands. She walked to the door, stopping one last time. You're going to regret this. The only one who is going to regret this is you. Because now you will have to live knowing you lost your mother. Not because of poverty or old age. You lost her because of greed. Because of cruelty. Because of your own choice. I opened the door. She walked out without looking back. I heard her car start and speed away. I closed the door slowly. I leaned against it. And then, only then, did I let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of liberation. The days after the confrontation were strange. I woke up that first morning expecting to feel sadness, regret, maybe guilt for being so hard on my own daughter. But I felt none of that. I felt peace. A deep peace I hadn't experienced in years. I got up, made my coffee, sat on the balcony, and just breathed. The morning air smelled different, cleaner, as if a heavy weight I had been carrying was finally gone. Amanda tried to call me that same afternoon. I didn't answer. She sent me messages. I didn't read them. On the third day, she showed up at my door, knocking insistently. I didn't open it. I just sat in the living room, in silence, waiting for her to leave. Eventually, she did. Brandon also tried to contact me. He sent me a long text message, apologizing, saying it was all a misunderstanding. That Amanda was a wreck. That I should please reconsider my decision. I blocked his number. I wasn't interested in hearing more lies. I wasn't interested in giving them another chance to manipulate me. I had spent my entire life giving chances, making excuses, forgiving. Not anymore. A week after that dinner, I called Marta. I asked her to come to my house. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to start rebuilding the relationships that truly mattered. When she arrived, I told her everything, every detail. The inheritance, Amanda's lies, the confrontation. Marta listened, her eyes growing wider and wider. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Oh, Susan, I'm so sorry, but I'm also so proud of you. You did the right thing." She cried with me. She hugged me. And in that hug, I felt something I hadn't felt from Amanda in years. True love. Unconditional. Without judgment. In the following weeks, I started making small but significant changes in my life. I hired someone to fix the things in the house that had been broken for years. The bathroom window that didn't close properly, the dripping kitchen faucet, the closet that needed painting. Not because I had to prove anything to anyone, but because I deserved it. I deserved to live in a comfortable, well-kept home. I also started buying new clothes. Not expensive, designer clothes. But nice clothes, in my size, in good colors. Clothes that made me feel good about myself when I looked in the mirror. I got my hair cut. I went to a real salon for the first time in years. Not the lady on the corner who charged $5. I spent $40 on a professional cut and soft highlights. When I left and saw myself in the car mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. I looked refreshed. Barb and Carol, my other friends, noticed the changes. They asked what had happened. I told them parts of the story, what was necessary. They supported me without asking uncomfortable questions. A month after the confrontation, I made an important decision. I called Mr. Evans and asked him to help me with something. I wanted to donate $50,000 to a support center for elderly women abandoned by their families. Women like me who had been forgotten by their children. The lawyer helped me with all the paperwork. The donation was made anonymously. I didn't need public recognition. I just needed to know that money would help someone who needed it. I also decided to sell the property in Houston that Robert had left me. There was no point in keeping it. I sold it for $350,000. I invested that money, following the advice of a financial advisor the lawyer recommended. For the first time in my life, I had financial security. I could sleep without worrying about rent, about food, about medical bills. It was a strange and wonderful feeling. But the money wasn't the most important part of all this. The most important part was that I had gotten my dignity back, my self-worth, my voice. 2 months after the confrontation, Marta invited me to a gathering at her house. She said there was someone she wanted me to meet. When I arrived, she introduced me to her niece Diana and Diana's 2 young sons. Boys of 6 and 8 years old, full of energy and laughter. I spent the afternoon playing with them, telling them stories, helping them with a puzzle. When I left, Diana hugged me and said, "Thank you for your time, Miss Susan. The kids adored you." On the way home, I realized something. Real family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the family you choose, the one that chooses you, the one that values you for who you are, not for what you can give them. I started to create new routines. On Tuesdays, I went to a knitting class at the community center. On Thursdays, I visited Marta and we cooked together. On Saturdays, I went to the farmer's market and then treated myself to breakfast at a nice coffee shop that served fresh pastries. Small things that made me happy. That reminded me it was good to be alive. One afternoon, 3 months after everything, I was watering the plants in the garden when I heard a knock at the door. I thought it was Marta. But when I opened it, I saw Amanda. She looked terrible. Puffy eyes, no makeup, wrinkled clothes. Nothing like the impeccable, arrogant woman she had been. "Mom," she whispered, "please, I need to talk to you." I was about to close the door. But something in her eyes stopped me. It wasn't manipulation. It was genuine pain. Real desperation. I let her in. We sat in the living room. And she began to talk. She told me that Brandon had left her, that her elegant friends had disappeared when they found out they had money problems, that the bank was about to foreclose on their apartment, that she had lost everything, and that, finally, In the midst of all that ruin, she had realized what truly mattered, what she had lost. Not the money. Me. Her mother. "I'm not asking you for money, Mom," she said through her tears. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. For everything. And I understand if you can never forgive me." I looked at her for a long moment. This broken woman in front of me. My daughter. The child I had held in my arms. The teenager I had comforted. The adult who had betrayed me. And I felt something I didn't expect. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was compassion. I stared at Amanda for what felt like an eternity. I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Humility. Real shame. Genuine pain. But I also saw something deeper. I saw a woman who had finally hit rock bottom and was beginning to understand the damage she had caused. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a series of conscious, cruel decisions you made over years. You erased me from your life. You hid information that belonged to me. You treated me like I was an embarrassment." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I have no excuses. I was so obsessed with appearances, with being someone important, that I forgot who I really was. I forgot where I came from. I forgot you." Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. I remained serene. I had cried enough for her over the years. I had no more tears to give her. "Forgiveness isn't something you can demand, or something I can just give you," I continued. "It's something that's built over time, with actions, with real change, not with words spoken in a moment of desperation." She nodded. "I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me now. I don't even know if I deserve another chance. I needed you to know that I see it now, that I understand. That losing you was worse than losing the apartment, the money, everything else." I got up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The shadows grew long across the garden I had tended myself for years. That simple garden, but so full of life. "Amanda," I said, without turning to look at her, "you and I need time, a lot of time, and that time can't start with lies or manipulation. It has to start with absolute honesty." I turned to face her. "If you truly want to rebuild something with me, you will have to show me with your actions that you've changed. I am not going back to being the mother who justifies everything, the one who accepts crumbs of attention, the one who is content to be invisible in your life." "I understand," she said. "And you're right. You have every right to ask that of me. You're going to have to work on yourself, on your values, on your way of seeing the world and other people. Because the woman who came to my house 3 months ago and told me I'd never be on her level, that woman cannot be my daughter. I don't want to be that woman anymore, Mom. I swear. Being alone these past few months, it made me see everything clearly. The friends I had weren't friends. The world I lived in was fake. It was all appearances and lies. And I became that. A lie." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I started going to therapy, twice a week. I'm working on understanding why I did what I did. Why I pushed you away. Why I hurt you so much." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "And I meant it. But you have to do it for you, not for me. You have to heal your own wounds before you can even try to heal the ones you gave me." Amanda stood up. She understood the conversation was over, for now. She walked slowly to the door. Can I visit you again?" she asked, her voice small. "Not right now, but later. When I've worked more on myself. When I can show you I'm really changing." "We'll see," I replied. "Time will tell." She nodded and left. I watched her walk to her car. Not the luxury one from before, but an old, modest one. I watched her get in and drive away, and I felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't love, like before, but it wasn't the sharp pain I had felt for months either. It was something in between. A door that wasn't completely closed, but wasn't open either. The following months were about personal growth for me. I continued to build my new life. I made more friends in my knitting class. I started taking international cooking classes at the community center. I traveled for the first time in my life. A simple trip to the beach with Marta and Barb. 3 days of sand, sun, and laughter. I bought myself a new phone with a good camera. I started taking pictures of the things that made me happy. My plants, the sunrise from my balcony, the dishes I cooked, and for the first time in years, I also posted photos to social media, not to show off, but to document my life. My real, simple, but genuinely happy life. Amanda reached out 3 more times in those months. Always with humility. Never asking for money. Only asking for time. Short conversations. A chance to show me she was changing. I gave her that time in small doses. Coffee for half an hour. A walk in the park. Conversations where she told me about her therapy, about the job she had found, about how she was learning to live with less and value more. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we had when she was a child. Probably not. Too much has happened. Too much was broken. But maybe, with time and real work, we can build something new. Something more honest. Something based on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. In the meantime, I kept living. Not for her. Not waiting for her to come back. But for me. I discovered that at 68 years old, there was still so much to do. So much to enjoy. So much to live for. Robert's money gave me security. Yes. But what really saved me wasn't the money. It was realizing my own worth. It was understanding that I didn't have to beg for love from someone who didn't know how to give it. It was learning that it was okay to set boundaries. That it was okay to say no. That it was okay to choose myself. One afternoon, almost a year after everything, I was sitting in my garden when I got a text from Amanda. It was a picture. It showed her cleaning tables at a small diner. The message said, "My first day at my new job. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. Thank you for teaching me the value of dignified work. I love you, Mom." I looked at that photo for a long time. I saw my daughter in a simple uniform, without perfect makeup, without expensive accessories. And for the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the girl she used to be, the girl who wrote me letters saying she wanted to be like me. I didn't reply right away. I let the message sit. But that night, before I went to sleep, I wrote back, "I'm glad to see you working with dignity. Keep it up, one step at a time." Because that's what we were both doing. Walking step by step toward something better. Toward a version of ourselves that was worthwhile. Her toward humility. Me toward empowerment. And I understood something fundamental. That true love isn't sacrificing yourself until you disappear. It's not letting people walk all over you because they're family. True love also includes self-love. It includes boundaries. It includes the ability to say, "This is not okay," and to walk away when you have to. My brother Robert gave me an enormous gift with that inheritance. Not just the money. He gave me the chance to discover who I was without the chains of need. Without the fear of being alone. Without the weight of feeling useless. He gave me the freedom to choose. And I chose to live. I chose my dignity. I chose my peace. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a completely different woman than the one I was a year ago. I see wrinkles, yes. I see gray hair. I see the marks of time. But I also see strength. I see clarity. I see a woman who knows what she's worth and who will never let anyone tell her otherwise again. My life isn't perfect. There are still hard days. There are still moments when it hurts to remember everything that happened. But there are also beautiful days. Days full of laughter with my friends. Days of new projects. Days of simply existing in peace. And that, I discovered, is more valuable than any luxury apartment or any perfect picture on social media. Peace. Authenticity. The right to live your life on your own terms. So to you who are reading this, to all the women who have felt that someone tried to erase them from their own story, I say this: do not let anyone steal your worth. It doesn't matter if it's a child, a husband, a friend. If someone makes you feel small, invisible, insignificant, walk away. Rebuild yourself. Discover who you are without them. Because in the end, the only approval you ever need is your own. And believe me when I tell you, reclaiming your dignity is the best gift you can ever give yourself. And you, have you ever felt like someone tried to erase you from your own story? What did you do about it? I would love to read your story in the comments.